Contention 1, the topic. The Supreme Court decision in Morrison created new substantial effects that is qualitatively dependent on the economic nature of the regulated activity. Saylor, 2002. Morrison shifted the focus of the Commerce Clause inquiry under Lopez and potential effects from the economic effects of the nature of the activity. Forces the court to determine whether or not activities are economic. The court fashioned a new test, one dependent on the economic nature of the regulated activity. And contention 2, economic rationality. Current Supreme Court decisions are ideologically oriented without law and economics. Judges are able to arbitrarily pick and choose based on their ideological predispositions. Brace et al. In 2006. Findings shed light on the foundation of the empirical support for two major theoretical approaches to the understanding of the judicial process. The LE hypothesis of 50's parent when operates. This model does not function well where the case selection is shaped by judicial discretion. It is the court that ultimately shapes the docket. It is predicted by the LE approach. Such ideology does not exert an influence on the outcomes in which case selection is litigant-driven. Ideology emerges statistically significant in cases involving reversal consistent with Ivy literature. A system of ideological judge voting is evident in courts strategically reverse lower court rulings when they have discretionary control of their docket. And data from the IBIT. We examine all our cases decided by state Supreme Court years in 95 through 98. State dockets exceeding 200 cases are selected from a random sample. And this ideological framework is at the heart of the Morrison decision. Only economic rationality can create a space of discussion necessary to spread law and economics throughout society. Article 1. Our shocking learning that something other than the pure doctrine may have been the driving decision. Morrison is an ironic ideology is, was, and always has been a part of the judicial process. It does not follow the judicial creation of constitutional law should be bounded by nothing more than personal predilections and majority of the fact that ideology is something doesn't mean it should be everything. A Supreme Court decision ought to reflect a careful accommodation of intuitive judgment and recent explanation. There must be a mix. That mix is check provided by some form of recent explanation. This connotes a relatively dispassionate examination of the intuition and examination that transcend intuition and tested against larger legal societal framework. These excessive reliance on intuition simply transforms personal predilection into law, and this is hardly a recipe for either justice or coherence. So we seek not perfection, but a balance between the subjective and objective elements of a decision. Application of a reasoning and provide non-believers sufficient basis for accepting legitimacy of judgment, which they disagree. And a quantitative substantial effects test does not sanitize rape, but rather creates the avenue for the justification of civil redress. This creates a disincentive for rape. Item 1. Characterizing gender-based nonviolence is the economic does not sanitize horrific great term. Native examination of exposes rape for what it is. The most basic economic interest one can have dominion over one's own body. The rapist claims an ownership interest in the victim, much the same way a master claims an ownership interest in his slave. The traditional remedy is the compensation or damages, i.e. an economic measure of the harm done to the victim. The availability of damages also imposes the higher price on acts of gender-based violence, creating a greater disincentive. Rape, regardless of how one else may characterize it, is also an economic crime. An economic analysis is a necessary prerequisite for increasing our happiness in life. Before your critique changes societal mindsets enough to solve. This is Posner 92. Jeffy's platform is a pacifist. He praises Indians and the poor of China. He thinks the finance did bad things to the German Jew. Down on television, fast food, food preserves, unfertilized eggs, vitamin supplements, white bread, and bottle feeding. He's down on the West. He wants us to adapt our environment rather than change the environment. Politics and nostalgia overlooks the bad features of the old days. Fully of the Inquisition, the pale settlement, the slave trade, the black death, the exclusion of blacks and women from any occupation, blatant, sinless. Jeffy seeks by push the golden age way back to the Stone Age. I may lack imagination, but I feel I would be happier or more fulfilled living in the Stone Age. I would rather read a book than sharpen a flint. There are now 5 billion people on Earth. Their happiness depends on modern technology, the division of labor, the existence of governments, and the science of economics. Dickens' weakness as a reformer said he looks changing the human sphere rather than changing institutions for solutions. Jackie too looks changing the human sphere to make life worth living. He wants people to turn off law and economics, putting the transformation in the human sphere. We shall need the tools of economics to guide law and improving the life of people. And economic rationality is necessary for the survival of humanity. It was Reisman in 98. The production of wealth vitally depends on the division of labor that underlies all of the against we ascribe technological process. The division of labor depends on laws and institutions countries adopt. In order for a country to act intelligently, it's clearly necessary for the citizens to understand the principles of economics. If they do not, there is only one question of time before the country will adopt more and more destructive laws, ultimately stopping all further economic process and causing actual economic decline in the absence of understanding. Citizens are in a position analogous to that of a crowd wandering among banks and computers with no understanding of the functioning of the main interest safety requirements of the equipment, and randomly pushing buttons and pulling levers. This is no exaggeration. In the absence of knowledge and economics, our contemporaries feel perfectly free to enact measures such as currency depreciation and price controls. Our civilization is perfectly capable of destroying itself. The importance of economics or entire modern imperial civilization depends on it being understood. What rest is the very life of the great majority of people not living in the absence of division of labor, the production of modern medicine, vaccines, and prevention of modern sanitation, and hygiene, the production of even adequate food supplies to our present numbers would be simply impossible. A territory of the U.S. amounts to less than 9 acres per person. The vast present population would be unable to survive. And trade liberalization brought about by economic rationality is the best route for poverty elimination. We have entered the golden age of globalization. This is Bala in 2002. Having considered the data, definition, and methodology, all conclusions can overturn globalization to equalize wages for similarly productive levels. There is one major force, globalization. This is not just catch up, but convergence. Big time, the prime beneficiaries are poor people in poor nations. The golden age of development is only just started. And we will not lose part of this part of the debate. We control uniqueness. Inequality is decreasing rapidly with globalization. This is Norberg in 03. Allegation of inequality is just wrong. The UN development program not just adjusted for purchasing power. Exchange trade is a poor yardstick of poverty. Poor people's actual living standard is far more on the cost than the vacationing. Norwegian Institute for Foreign Affairs for purchasing power inequality has been continuously declining with focus on inequality between present countries. Inequality was at its lowest points in World War II estimates to compare countries rather than individual scores. Labor rates made real inequality because they allow gains for huge numbers to be outweighed by losses for property. Once you show the evidence is overwhelming, Gini coefficient declined from 0.6 in 1968 to 0.52 in 97. The UNDP on welfare statistics is prone to an even faster reduction in equality. HDI adds welfare, the income, education, and life expectancy. 0.091 in developing countries rose faster from 0.26 to 0.56. Thus, the plan. The United States Supreme Court should employ an economic analysis of commercial clause law, holding that conclusive quantitative data is necessary to prove that an activity substantially affects interstate commerce because the economic nature of an activity does not determine whether it has a substantial effect on interstate commerce. And contention 3, solvency. The broader definition of economics assumed by the plan would overrule Morrison. Everything is economic, including rape. The question is not whether rape is economic, but whether rape is substantially affects interstate commerce. Item 1. The court did not define economic activity. Morrison posits their definition within this real world. Individuals operate as rational, maximizing their self-interest. Thus, housework is an economic activity, meaning the houseworker is a spouse who does not receive compensation and both cost of opportunity. Cost of the housework is time. The rapist acting within a market in which sex is not a free commodity perceives the benefit of forced sexual intercourse is outweighing the risk of prosecution and punishment. The consequences for transfer of wealth and utility from the victim to the rapist. In short, rape is an economic crime, and the act of rape constitutes economic activity. And contingent 4 framework. You should evaluate competing arguments under the following evaluative framework. A claim should be given near zero probability. A claim plus a warrant should also be given near zero probability. The difference between the two should be infinitesimal. And a claim plus a warrant without data to support it should be given a default 100% probability. Thus, judges stick to rely on data and empirical research to determine the validity of competing arguments. And this economic approach law is the foundation of the law and economics movement, Cooter in 2002, or 82. Economic imperialism, one of the conventional law lefters on devices lost no more chance of developing quantitative methodology than Australia instead of developing the right, but most lawyers conceive empirical research as analyzing appellate cases, mainstream legal theory, contingency view, philosophy of law, whose foundation is the analysis of the language lawyer, pouring over cases, contrasts with economists, and implementing equation and displacing computer tape. Economics is advanced more by analyzing statistics by scrutinizing cases more by taking derivatives and parsing cases. Economists expect the history of economics to be repeated in law. There is competition between alternative style of research whose effects upon legal education. Profound economists approach a scientific, rational, consistent, unenslaved by tradition. Lawyers are fond of trying to refute economic approach without understanding it, e.g. it's just utilitarianism all over again. Conclusions can be proved. First step that the individuals are maximizing specified objectives. Second, interaction settles down to a stable equilibrium. The third is to judge the equilibrium of the criterion of efficiency. Scientific method requires an additional step, testing predictions against facts. Economic modeling law can be contrasted with traditional legal scholarship between taking derivatives and parsing phrases. Second, between inductive and deductive reasoning. The economic approach proceeds by constructing a mathematical model, deducting decimal hypothesis from and conducting the test. This economic approach carries hypothesis to the data where the traditional method builds freely directly from the cases. And this economic education law and economics provides underlies any real legal education. This is Ackerman in 86. Law and economics are traditional lawyers with obsolescence have necessity to respond to their dread day when they confront a regression analysis set of forward study when their client is a party who has wrongfully failed to internalize externalities. This question is a laughing manner in a profession whose stock and trade is specific argument. If traditionalists cannot master the new jargon, that will be displaced by lower economists who do not occur under a similar disability. And traditional legal scholarship is deeply followed. Law reviews and journals make normative policy prescriptions without any underlying empirical research. The causal use of few examples or casual studies violates the rules of inference, underlying economic analysis, and law-threatening effective policy making. This is Epstein and King in 2002. Empirical legal scholarship is deeply common in proceeding with research agendas with little awareness of rules of inference, methodologies, empirical analysis present, and traditional academic fields are virtually non-existent in the nation's law reviews. Readers with less accurate information about the empirical world than the studies surrounding these data, but overly confident conclusions suggest this is highly problematic. Too much legal scholarship ignores rules of inference and applies instead to the rules of persuasion and advocacy. We want greater attention to methodology and legal studies which is non-existent in law reviews. The complete list of law review articles devoted to improving and understanding, explicating, or adapting the rules of inference is as follows. None. Data from the same. Reading all 231 articles published in all American law reviews between 1990 and 2000 have the word empirical in their title. We've been supplementing includes all empirical articles from the 6 top law reviews with 50 most cited articles. We also searched exceedingly something very roughly approximating a representative sample of all empirical research and law reviews. Our results are discouraging. The law reviews, everyone we have read thus far, every single one violates the rules.
First of all, let's talk about this Posner card. You say it's a necessary prerequisite before your critique changes style to mindsets. This says, maybe I'm laying too much stress on the vegetarian plank in Jaffe's platform. There is more. I mentioned his hostility to allopathic medicine and that he likes to make his own food.
Yeah,
it comes as no surprise that he is a pacifist. He won't even kill mice or roaches. What the hell does this have to do with anything but that Jaffe apparently is kind of a
hominem attack on Jaffe, it talks about how, with critique alternatives, we necessarily must apply economics to them to see how they will actually work in the real world rather than
It seemed like to one person, but that one
praises
person
the American Indians and the poor of China a great deal. He thinks that finance did bad things to the character of the German Jew.
Yeah, this dude,
he is very much down on television, fast food.
This is very representative of probably what your critique's going to encompass in one way or another.
I doubt it.
That's what we'll find out.
I think we all know what we wrote, and I don't think he's a vegetarian or a pacifist.
I mean, obviously,
but, let's talk about what is data. What constitutes solid, valid
Our Cooter
data?
draws a distinction between a weak form of data and a strong form of data. The weak form of data is where you just proves out causation, like this happened here, so that means it always happens. Like Dylan saying Nazis calculated, so therefore calculation leads to genocide. Whereas a strong form of data is where we take actual statistics and studies done with an independent variable of causation and make a regression model out of them to study that
so if we can prove that
correlates
your
actually.
data is manipulated to prove a political point, then is that weak data?
That's actually
No.
the status quo. That's our ideology card. That the court right now.
Okay, you use more than one data.
Doesn't really
I'm
use-
saying for your impact claims, if we can prove things
Which
like the
impact
way that you
claims?
measure poverty is not an accurate mechanism of data, it's manipulated.
I mean, I
like,
guess
that
you
should
can
be
be very
recognized.
specific
As long as
to
you
the
have a better
methodology you
alternative
have.
method of data. If you just say that, well, all data is suspect, that type of general.
No, what if we're just
doesn't
like
apply
your
to
data
specific-
is suspect?
Well,
Then do we throw it out?
And you
You
have
have
a
a great-
better
you have
form
a
of
great
data,
method.
we'll have that debate, but,
Okay.
I mean,
Let's talk about this data for trade liberalization suite. First of all, it's underlined in a way that doesn't even make grammatical sense. Globalization equalized wages or similar poor productive levels. This just says
Bailey
that.
failed English, but,
I'm sorry
Globalization
about
does
that.
equalize wages.
but yeah.
But I'm just wondering, like the ununderlined parts of this card are certainly not as conclusive as your poor
That's
highlighting.
probably not true. All of that
Is helping to equalize
Imagine
wages,
there's no
and the
country,
major
poverty,
beneficiaries are
inequality.
helping people in the developing world. Like I don't understand how this is data.
That's the data, that's the model.
This is the data for us?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Read the title of the book. Imagine there's no country, poverty, inequality. and
I'm
growth,
so
and
convinced by
globalization.
titles of books.
And that should help you a lot.
That is data.
Read the data.
Data
You want data, read
all
this
day
card.
strong. Can I see your
Oh, yeah.
framework contention?
Sorry, yeah,
I got it.
Oh, you got it?
well, then,
Actually, you only have 10 seconds, so let's push it. Thank you.
It's okay.
right.
Two